Hey there, Collective. This is Seven Scorpion Tarot, and I want to welcome you to tonight's reading. So, tonight I want to do something a little bit different. I'd been mulling over what to do most of the day, and I was like, I can't think of anything of what to do, and I completely blanked on the eclipse. So, I had something else in mind, so I'm going to roll with that. I wanted to tap into some channeled energy and get a channeled message from the Morrigan, which is what I had set up for, which is why I have the Crow Tarot and the Urban Crow Oracle. But it actually seems to be Medusa that wants to come through. Uh, as I was getting set up, my cat, she had started playing with my labradorite necklace, which is something I bought after I had a dream about Medusa, um, which was actually had to do with tarot cards. There were three tarot cards out on the table in the dream. So the way that dream came through a long time ago, uh, it was talking about the middle path. The middle path is really the message of that dream. And so that's what I'm going to pull for positions for. So the middle will be the middle path, and the right will be the mundane, the left will be the mystical. So trying to blend those two seeming dichotomies from one another that I don't know. I don't see them as mutually exclusive. So let's get into it. Let's get some cards and I'll get a little bit more into the dream and some of the really interesting synchronicities. Because when I first started re-engaging my practice and my faith, and sorry, I'm getting distracted. My cat's being very cute. Yes, I was talking about you playing with my necklace. Um, but as I started re-engaging with my faith, she was who came first. She was who came through first. And I don't see that to be very surprising or as very surprising. Hey, kitten, welcome. Welcome to the table. We're going with that one for the middle. But the reason I don't see that as surprising is her being the patron saint of the traumatized, if you're familiar with her story at all. Um, but we've got the Six of Pentacles for the middle path. Interesting. So equal give and take for whatever's going to be coming through on the mystical and the mundane side. Kitchen, I already need more of the table. uh, but yeah, so she came through a lot through synchronicities, and synchronicities was one of the first ways that I was willing to listen to, energies and whatnot coming through. Because as a recovering muggle, 20 years back into the broom closet after the way I was getting treated at home, um, I had to deconstruct some stuff that's been programmed in me and remove some judgments that have been placed there that weren't my own in how to engage with this world. And it's finding the balance between the two. I mentioned before, I live with PTSD and seizures. So when engaging with deity or spirit work or things like that, making sure your mental health is on point is really a priority. And I don't come from a family structure that's accepting of that approach. It's, like, sure, you can play with your cards and whatnot. Like, we'd prefer it if other people did. Find that tail in the fire. Uh, Thanks, Gittin. Like you can play with your cards and whatnot. We'd prefer it if other people would and not you. We'll kind of tolerate it. Like we won't say anything too bad about what you're doing unless we don't approve. You know, like it's very tenuous, that whole being accepted for who you are thing. Hmm. Uh, and it's just not my way. That's not the middle path. Uh, it's and it bothers me too that my grandmother, the way she was treated, the way her condition was described was the best they could come up with was schizophrenia. Uh, she's got some or had some symptoms of the type of seizure I have. So I don't think she was diagnosed properly. And someone who, a woman particularly, who grew up in the Great Depression, I doubt she got the proper medical care. And given the way I was treated by a family member, I would not be surprised if her healthcare was negatively impacted by them as well, which hurts to say. Uh, but I'll start shuffling for the mystical. But synchronicities were how she first came through. And it started small, and then it started to be like a club over the head. Uh, it would be like, why does Medusa keep popping up on my YouTube feed? Like when she, at the time, wasn't someone I was looking up. Uh, and just like random little stuff like that, or be out with some gal pals, and here we go, Ace of Wands in the mystical, but be out with some gal pals, and somebody in a Versace t-shirt walked by, but like the largest, like biggest, boldest Versace logo you've ever seen. And I don't know if you're catching the vibe from me, but like I buy my t-shirts off of Etsy. Like I'm not really a Versace girl. Like no shade, you do you, whatevs. Uh, but had that logo not been that size, I wouldn't have noticed that the logo is Medusa. Uh, and interesting. So we've got the Ace of Wands here in the mystical position. So the Ace of Wills, a new idea. I need to chew on that for a second. Might actually need to get a clarifier. Uh, and there's another time I just so happened to pull up behind a like some old beat up 90s Corolla or something that had a bumper sticker for a local utility company that had Medusa in the name, with all of like two reviews on Google of it. Like the odds of me being the one to pull up behind, like, this is probably like one of their or their only employee's car. Uh and there were a couple like outside of the dream. Uh oh, that must be, I don't need the clarifier. Um so the Ace of Wands in relation to the dream I had about Medusa, it was a really interesting dream. So it was this really, I got a little sparkler just fly off the candle. That was cool. Uh, but in this dream, it was a beautiful, like soft pink, like borderless place. And of the interactions I've had in dreams with deities, borderless seems to be a quality of that. And that was definitely a quality in the near death experience that I had that I had talked about in it was one of the hero's journeys readings where I met the Morrigan. And that borderless quality is a good indicator to me for how my interactions go that I'm interacting with deity energy and I'm starting to shuffle for the mundane. Excuse me. Oh, throat's a little dry. And there's also like an unusual sense I might get of the energy being disproportionate with the figure. Like when you're next to a person, you can sense that they're person sized, but it's almost like a person with the proportions of a building, but you can't see it. You can sense it, but you can't like detect it. It's really unusual. And this is the stuff that really mystified me as a recovering muggle of like when people talk about channeling and whatnot. I'm like, what the heck do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? I need more. I need a little bit more. So I can tap into this and identify where the line is, where is the middle path between mystical and thought disorder? Something like that. Like, do I need to talk to a doctor? And when you are engaging in stuff like this, uh, I found a lot more acceptance with my therapist of someone I'm spending an hour a week with has a much greater understanding of me in context than an MD who I see for 30 minutes once every 3 months. Like, it's just not the same quality of care. I'm also not giving you any sort of rationalization to not see your doctor. Like, do that. And you can tell, you can sense the difference in yourself of if you're actively having an issue or not. Like, there's a really clear cut difference between those things. And also, like, it helps to have, I think, a community as well in this area to kind of bounce off of, of rational people who would never encourage you away from your medication or away from your doctor's appointments or whatnot. Like, help you find maybe a better fit for a doctor, someone who's more respectful of your beliefs. Yeah, I think that's appropriate myself. Uh, but this is the type of thing in my family structure that it would be like, nope, just medicate everything away. Like, no consideration for I'm creating a space, I'm opening myself up to messages, or I'm talking about dreams and synchronicities. Like, I don't know. But in this dream I had, it was this lovely pink background, this borderless background, and she was at a table, and it was her before being transformed into a gorgon. She still had um, her hair that she was so famous for when she was a priestess of Athena, and it was this tight like ringlet, curly auburn hair. And I just like had this gut feeling of that's Medusa. Like without it was like a knowing, not necessarily a thought. And she had the three tarot cards down on this table, and they were all face down. And there were three different stones on each card. And on the middle card, there was, it was just like a shiny one that stuck out to me. And I just, that time I did have a thought that was like the Medusa stone. And she said something to me and I couldn't hear her. And she took the stone and she pressed it to her forehead and then like pointed at the card and pointed at her forehead. I still couldn't hear what she was saying. And then I woke up from the dream. So not a super long dream, not a super complicated dream, but that energy, that deity energy, it rocks you. It's really unmistakable when you've had a dream like that. Like Carl Jung called them big dreams. And so they'd be big dreams, they'd be about, I don't know if he actually mentioned any interactions with deities or not. He may have, but interactions with the psyche, like interactions with the self. Uh, and that those dreams, you really only have a few of those, like a handful of those in your life. They're really, really stark. And it wasn't all too long after that that I had started up the tarot channel. And it's weird how this stuff is like coming together. Because I had started this channel on about 6 months ago on the lunar eclipse in Pisces. And now tomorrow is the lunar eclipse in Virgo, which that's my north and south node placement. Um, and I was getting like eclipse energy through meditation ahead of this reading, like connecting into Medusa. I got like a crescent moon this way, like this was the way it was facing, looking, I guess. But the moon's full right now, and I'm still trying to revive, restore my clairs, everything I become detached from. Uh, when I went back into the broom closet, and I had just like thought, like, is this about the eclipse? And I got a yes, like right back. And that was such a cool feeling, like to start to be actively tuning back in. And because I always wondered, like watching other tarot readers on YouTube, I'm like, are they hearing voices? Like, what's happening? Like, and I just kept trying to like re-engage these things and re-engage these things. And I've had to do so much work to work past the wounding of my family structure, of look past the judgment, be mindful of your health, and just engage in these things openly. Uh, and we'll see like where it goes from here. I don't know, because it started with synchronicities, and now we're tuning back in. Like I used to do a lot of pendulum work when I was younger. Uh, done a little bit of that more recently, and I got that icky stomach feeling too when I heard that yes, the same like feeling of being in the void of like it almost feels like when you're on a roller coaster, that weird when you go over the hump and it's about to drop. Uh kind of like that, but like weirder and different. uh and I don't know, it's just cool. It's fun. And there's such interesting synchronicities with her, and I was starting to get slammed over the head with them because I wasn't paying attention. And the longer you don't pay attention, the worse they get, was my experience. And it was my first or more recent, I can't remember if I used to do this or not. I think I did, but dip my toe into a little bit of bibliomancy. And it was just like a fun, like Instagram post and whatnot. And it was like, grab the nearest book to you, to your left. And uh, I think it was like page 22, line 7, something like that. And I had just got stone blind and I hadn't really dug into it yet. And that line that I landed on was husband, like question mark. And it was Hera talking to Zeus. And I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. And, I moved on. And then a few months later, uh, the Gladiator 2 pictures came out. And like I joked that Pedro Pascal, my celebrity husband and whatnot, but I saw Medusa plastered across his chest. And then that line, the bibliomancy, it clicked into place, that synchronicity. Uh, and I was just floored. Like, oh my God, okay, Medusa, I need to I need to learn more about her. I need to, you know, actually read this book, like, because reading books and buying books is a different, two different hobbies. Don't judge me, or do, like, whatever. Uh, and there was one other, like, not all too long after that, my cat had lost her collar. Like, I don't know what she did with it. If she just like yanked it off or something. And I was mulling over like Medusa's relationship to Athena. And that's when I really, like, in my mind, between Athena, Poseidon, and Perseus, Athena is the real villain, like at the top of the pyramid of everything. And I just, like, so happened to look down at my cat in her box, like she was sitting in her cardboard box. Um, and like all the way up against the edge was her collar. And I had this thought pop in my head of what was lost is now found. And it's like my compass recalibrated or something. I don't know. It was because it made me realize some stuff about like my own story and whatnot. And her story helped me work through a lot of my stuff. And it's like Joseph Campbell, the power of myth. And that really restored all those synchronicities, restored a sense of awe in me, a sense of awe that had been lost. Not completely, but it's like the burner had been turned all the way down. Uh, but the only path I was pursuing was the mundane. That, like, this is it. There's nothing else to life. Uh, and it's dreary and depressing and abysmal, and it was sucking the life out of me. It's not who I am. And remaining in those structures of the past was really holding me back. It was holding me back from a lot of happiness, from uh, not being accepted for who I am. And I know we talk a lot about, and rightfully so, don't get me wrong, um, the folks in the LGBT community that have to separate themselves from their family due to their sexual orientation. Uh, Mine was always just kind of danced around and not talked about. It was just kind of like, she's straight passing, good enough, whatever. Uh, the witch wound that was created by my faith not being accepted in the home and having to ultimately estrange myself, not only in the interest of my health and wellness, because I wasn't receiving the proper medical care, uh, but my spiritual wellness. Having to separate yourself from your family for faith reasons, that sucks. Like, there really isn't a reason I didn't need to separate myself from my family structure. Uh, I was more like, I was an accident. My parents met at a party. It was the 80s. They got married. Um, that's not really a viable solution to, like, it's not going to equate in necessarily a happy family. It could, like, you could roll the dice and it could end up that way. That's not how it worked out for me. Uh, it was pretty clear to me early on that I was unwanted. And no, they didn't come outright and say that. That would have been too obvious. That would have been outright cruel, blatantly cruel. It's more about subtleties. Uh, and being demonized, being villainized, is the part of Medusa's story that I can relate to. That it's not what happened to me that's a problem, it's my reaction to it. The twisted logic of the antagonistic personality, which that was Athena. Athena had an antagonistic personality. And it's evidence in Arachne's myth as well, the weaving contest, where when Arachne, I think that's her name, Arachne, her weaving, she was immortal and it was better than Athena's weaving. Um, she was then turned into a tarantula after that, for having the audacity to defeat Athena. So this is a theme with her. Oh, interesting. The lovers. Hmm. In the mundane. So a choice. And I mean, that's what I made, was a choice. Uh, a painful choice. Like you can see at the bottom of the card, there's the heart out there, you know. for the world to see. I don't think, had I not made that decision to separate myself from my family, I don't think I would have ever had a chance at happiness. Um, things aren't perfect, you know, there's improvements that need to be made one step at a time, though, the how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. Uh, but I think the saying is, what is it, faith of a mustard seed? The dark nights that has got me through, pretty incredible. Uh, and the assuredness that I have when I'm alone, more alone than I've ever been in my life, I feel so much more secure now, more secure than I've ever felt. Uh, I didn't have the right people around me. And I don't know, like, you don't nail other, like, interpersonal relationships, like, right out the bat, like friendships and romantic relationships and whatnot. Like, what are the odds that you would just, like, automatically be born into the family you're supposed to be born into? Like, that's where that phrase comes in. It's one of those half phrases. The blood is thicker than water, where the whole phrase is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Uh, it's soul family, you know, those bonds, those chosen bonds that once you've really established yourself as your authentic self, you can find your direction. find find your way, go your own way. That's so fitting. I love that. And I like the rays behind it. There's a lot of hope, and it's not, the crow is not going towards hope. The hope is emanating from the crow. The hope comes from within. It's a light that's carried within you. Uh, and at the end of Medusa's story, she, met her end in her sleep and then gave birth to Pegasus, the only Pegasus. There was only the one, and uh, can't remember that name. The Golden Giant. I think we all know Pegasus quite a bit more because of the Disney movie, because of Hercules. And a Pegasus to me is a very hopeful symbol, and it's there is a sense of freedom in that. It may have not been for her, but it was for her children. And me, I made the choice while I could to, it's just going to be me and fur babies from here on out. So that hope, that next chance at life, that next chance at redemption, that's going to me. That goes towards the self. And if we're still walking, not even if we're still walking, I don't want to exclude anybody, but if we're still breathing, if there is still breath in our lungs, it's not over yet. There's still hope. And that, it's weird how my greatest sense of hope, the strongest, like, resolve I've found in myself was in my darkest days. Funny how that works. And same with my confidence too. Like it took me getting to my least fit to actually find that self-love, that real self-acceptance, um, that I didn't get from my family structure. It like I was never going to be good enough. Never. Let's see. Ooh, monster betraying the martyrs. That's fitting for never being good enough. And never look back. The nearly deads. Very different. Emo rock and death metal. So maybe depending on your mood, you know, shuffle and shift around. And hopefully, this gives you, I don't know, just a sense of openness to pursue whatever it is your middle path looks like for you with openness and with discernment too, of taking care of your wellness, not only from the aspect of your mental health and making sure that that's okay, but your spiritual health. Are you in the right crowd? Are you running with the right people, you know? And the sun will rise tomorrow. That's a guaranteed thing. No matter how long today is, the sun will set and it will rise again. It's something to count on, even if you don't go into deity work, you don't go into divination work, things like that. It's a way to keep looking forward. But overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.